My next guest is someone I have followed for years, and I'm so excited to share her with you. Her name is Kelly Ryerson, and she works at the intersection of health and agriculture, addressing the ways in which our food system, soil, and microbiome have been corrupted by the rampant use of toxic herbicides. She collaborates with scientists, farmers, policymakers, and companies to tackle pressing agricultural issues and their contribution to human disease. Kelly founded the educational platform Glyphosate Facts and most recently became the co-executive director of American Regeneration with Ryland Engelhardt. She has a BA from Dartmouth College in Economics and an MBA with a certificate in healthcare public policy from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She also studied integrative health coaching through Duke University. And Kelly is a two-time survivor of hyperemesis gravidarum, and she is the mom of two tween and young adult children. And so I'm thrilled to speak with her about all things motherhood, how it informs your vision, just like we're doing with everybody else. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so thrilled because I've been a follower of your work, and as a mother, I have found that the information that you have shared and continue to share just makes mothering easier when we care so much about our children. Can you speak to how motherhood led you to this work, perhaps, or how motherhood has informed your work?
Absolutely. I came from, my eyes were open to this whole issue of the toxicity of the food supply really through my own illness before my kids. And I just had a terrible time with autoimmunity and all kinds of very strange symptoms all over my body, and the doctors couldn't figure out. And long and the short of it is like they had me on a boatload of pharmaceuticals that really made things worse. And it wasn't until I understood that this was being driven by my gut and what I was eating could I actually get better. And so that was a really long road, and discovering what these pesticides are that are so prevalent in our food supply and what their mode of actions are on the human body that by and large our regulators have ignored. And with that lens, then I was able to look at my children and better understand what was going on with all of their various health issues, which they had. And, I actually wasn't able to breastfeed. And so I ended up formula feeding. And between that and C-sections, um, I really felt that they were really behind the game in terms of health. And so I really started investing in my family's food, basically, and starting to give them everything I could, taking the dyes out at an early age and making sure things were organic when they could be. And seeing to it that our nutrition is so low in this country because the crops themselves no longer have the same level of nutrients that they once did. And so understanding that, and then going in and having them taking their magnesium and zinc and these things that weren't really foundational. And it was really phenomenal watching, because I would bring these problems, say digestive issues with my kids, ADHD certainly, and various rashes and things that would pop up on them. And of course, the doctors would always say the answer are pharmaceuticals, and never once did they ask what was being eaten, or even would, if I were to bring it up, it was dismissed as not likely causing whatever the issues are.
Mm.
And so understanding that that's what I was dealing with them, and then starting to make incremental changes myself as being my own science, my own researcher, and trying things and seeing their gut issues resolve has been
Mm.
nothing short of miraculous, and seeing them really thrive right now. I mean, we were able to eliminate all of those issues. And I really feel like it's a privilege that I even knew to do that. And that's something that most people on this planet, but especially in the United States where we're so sick, don't have access to that kind of information. And so, I've tried to be making more moms aware of some of these issues.
It's wonderful. It's so important. It's congratulations really on doing that for yourself and then for your children, because
Thank you.
we all feel so, as moms, we feel so responsible. I mean, if something is up with my daughter, I'm like, how can I fix it? What can I do? How can I,
Totally.
you
Then
know,
I'm up all night, like, what is it? I know what it is. Guess and check a lot of things. They get to be guinea pigs.
Yeah, exactly. And to think, you know, it's so interesting to hear you say once again how you go to the doctor and the doctor dismisses. I think of mom doctor, doctor mom, because we are the ones that know our children better than anybody else. We're with them. We watch them mostly, unless, we're not. But it's so frustrating when I hear that. So
Oh, it's so
aggravating.
frustrating. And, and I think back to one of my children had a really big issue, say with constipation. And
Mm.
so what were they put on Miralax? And of
Oh,
course, and I did that. And for about like 3 weeks, and then I was like, I just don't feel right about this. It seems like plastic.
yeah.
And, then a little research, I'm like, oh my gosh, under no circumstance should I be treating this with this. And it's like, why was that the first thing you go to? So much clearly, like my daughter actually had a gluten sensitivity, like that fixed it. Right. So, I mean, really crazy.
Yeah, we had my pediatrician, my daughter's pediatrician, was really a well-known doctor named Dr. Paul Fleiss. He's very
Okay.
well known. His daughter made him even more famous. The Hollywood Madam was his daughter, but is his daughter.
Wow.
She's still alive. Yeah, Heidi Fleiss. But Dr. Fleiss was so alternative. And he was so supportive. Like when I was pregnant, my husband and I interviewed pediatricians because I had my list of things that I wanted to make sure didn't happen and that I wouldn't be forced to do.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you were able to break that down yourself and discover what was going to happen, do you feel like motherhood exacerbated your passion for uncovering what is going on with all the herbicides and all of the pesticides?
Oh my gosh, it completely did. And specifically from all perspectives, but in our town, we actually have a pediatric cancer pocket, and it's been traced back to pesticide use on some of the school fields. And it's terrible because even with a lot of activism, there's still this mental disconnect between the thought that that actually could have caused it. And like, they like these government officials can't believe that these things would be legal and be on the market if that could possibly cause a pediatric cancer pocket. And you see this all over. You see it in farming communities and oftentimes from parks. And so certainly watching that has been really something else. And the other part of it that I tend to always come back to, there are all kinds of impacts from pesticides, including cancer. But the one thing I really focus on is its impact on fertility, because these chemical and thinking about my children and their ability to reproduce, we've been hearing all this about the crashing sperm counts and over the last 50 years, which is interestingly the dawn of the agricultural chemical era. And then thinking of my daughter and her limited eggs, and how are we going to be sure we're preserving those? And you start digging into what these pesticides do. And in fact, I went in September to the Office of Pesticide Programs to present all this evidence that they are not adequately assessing the endocrine disruption from glyphosate and atrazine. And when you look and see what their process was, which with complete disregard to our children's ability to reproduce in the future, it's so infuriating. Like I just sit there and I think, if do you want to be a grandparent? Most of these people were parents. Do you want to be a grandparent? If you do, why aren't you shouting out about this? We see the evidence shows that it is really decreasing the levels of testosterone and estrogen in our kids, as well as straight up impacting the very physiology of the ovaries and the testes. And glyphosate crosses the blood testis barrier and goes into semen, and it impacts sperm. And these are things that are such an unbelievable emergency that at this point, I was at the White House last week for the big Maha Commission announcement, and it's hard. And I went through this thing in my mind. Obviously, I would never do this, but I was like, I felt like bolting to the front and telling Trump, weed killer is in semen and it's killing sperm, like
Right.
straight up, because that actually could
Running
be
toward
enough,
the front.
right? It'd be like, no, and that would have made news. But but it's so just aggravating to see that this happens. And of course, it does come back to just protecting our children and
Yeah.
protecting who's coming after us, and all the moms that are coming after us and wanting to be able to have that miracle of having a baby. That is a very basic right of just being on this planet.
Yes. God, thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing. And I support you. And as long as security doesn't try and, wrestle you to the ground, I support
Or
you. If
shoot me
I were
down.
there, I'd be running up with you, just trying to, you know, it's almost like waving this flag in front of people, like, hello.
It is. And when I first got on this, it was funny because I was first talking to some fertility groups because I was like, oh, they need to know. And I realized, oh no, because that IVF industry is a huge moneymaker. They have no incentive whatsoever to shut down what's giving
Oh,
them
you're
business.
right.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're huge and they have a huge lobby, the whole thing.
they have a lobby?
Yeah, they have people that go in and lobby because I mean, the sad thing is now that really it's only wealthy people that are able to do IVF because it's so expensive. And so I understand that aspect of like, if people can't afford it, that's not really fair. So then they're trying to get the government funding to go into IVF, but then that bloats up the whole, that whole thing. So once again, money is so highly involved. So,
Gosh,
but yeah, the incentives aren't aligned for the IVF companies to have infertility go down.
whoa. Wow. It's so shocking to me. We were chatting a little bit before, and I remember, I feel like I had this greater awakening in 2015 when all of the bills were introduced to remove parents' rights. Because really it's removing the removal of parents' rights and children's rights to receive education, to receive entertainment and vocation, sports. Um, and it was just really at that moment when I started to understand about follow the money and agendas and lobbyists. I mean, before that, I was just like doing my own thing, with my
Yeah.
child, and I had my own beliefs, and they were very aligned with what you're talking about, and and then all of a sudden it was just like my head, you know, because to wrap myself around the fact that these agendas and these lobbyists are not thinking about your children. They're really,
Oh, it's so shocking. And when I first learned about the toxicity of glyphosate and its use as an antibiotic, or not its use, but well, it could be, but it serves as an antibiotic when it hits your microbiome. And I this was 2016, I guess, because it was just after IR came out. And I said, the government needs to know. I found out this research. I'm going to tell them. I'm going to make an appointment. I'm going to tell them. They won't believe it. This is terrible. Like, legitimately, that's where I was coming from. I
yeah,
thought that they had our best interest in heart. And when you suddenly realize, oh no, this is so sick that they
yeah,
absolutely know that they're, say, killing our ability to reproduce, giving us cancer, knowingly doing so and believing the industry, whatever they feed them, just because, that's where the money is so disturbing, particularly as an American. I mean, I am a very patriotic American. My dad was in the military. I love this country. And I think, we grew up at a time where it was very pro America. America is like the best thing on the planet. There was a lot of propaganda around that. So like making, I think, people just very patriotic. And so when you learn that these deep things that, we really should be quite ashamed of, it's disappointing.
yes. Yeah, my dad fought at Iwo Jima. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I understand about that commitment. And it's just, and I feel like when you become a parent, I talk about this a lot. I've said this, it's like my relationship to life changed 180 degrees when I saw that line on the stick that said I was pregnant. There was just something ancestral, ancient, and it was just like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to pass on to my child generational trauma to the best of my ability. I'm not going to, I was like organic and sustainable and pesticide free and hormone free and all of that, because I just thought the little that I knew, even at that time, was just very intuitive. And I had had health issues in my 20s. So I was always reading labels and looking,
Oh, you were on it. Yeah.
without even realizing, like, it was just, it seemed very natural. I need to figure this out because I'm not doing that well. And so, um, I feel like mothers are the ones, and the ones that are mothering. I loved how you talked about gardeners being mothers, like mothering the earth, farming.
Mhm.
That's why it's so funny. When I had a conversation with Gabe, I said, you're the new rock star.
He totally is.
Yeah,
100% he's a new rock star. And
yeah,
we need people to realize that these farmers that are doing the right thing in regenerative agriculture and going and educating other farmers as to how to tend that soil and really restore fertility to the entire planet doing so. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. And I just there's so many aspects of this food subject that have drawn my attention, but this one is the one that it's so fulfilling. And if anyone has had even a home garden and you see it thrive, and particularly when you've put that work into it to make it, say, an organic garden or limit your use of inputs and all that, and see it still work well, and see, pollinators when they're not in collapse, which unfortunately they are right now, when they're not in a collapse, coming and pollinating, that is so otherworldly to me. I just find that just so wonderful. And it is mothering, and gardening is mothering. And I actually think that, when we have our dogs and our cats, like, that's mothering. It's this wonderful thing that we're able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think our kids always realize that. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I didn't grow up. I was completely like the alien in my family, like, to a large extent. They acknowledge, but I was that person that just really didn't. I just felt like there was more. I just always felt like there was more to this than what you're telling me. Like, this doesn't, it just didn't make sense in here. Like, I heard you,
Mhm.
but it just didn't make sense. Why wouldn't you want to give people healthy food? Why wouldn't you want to make sure the water's clear? Why wouldn't you want to empower mothers? Like,
And what's very strange to me, and going back to so I covered the Monsanto um,
I was
cancer Roundup trials, and they have a scientist there at Bayer, and she was from Monsanto, and her name's Donna Farmer, and which is an ironic name, and she's a toxicologist, and she was like their defender, basically, of glyphosate. In fact, I think that's how the like plaintiff attorneys called her the defender of glyphosate, and it's so unbelievable to me because she's a mom, and she's there saying, I feel totally fine going around and spraying this all around my family. And we know she knows that this causes these problems because she was the one that worked to ghostwrite research that would show something different. So what is that? Like, I just feel like all moms need to get together here and hold
yeah,
tightly and say, we're not going to do this to
yes,
our kids.
yes.
And that one, I think of all the people that have tried to defend glyphosate or pesticides, that one just seemed the most upsetting.
It is. And my curiosity would be to sit down with her and ask her, like, what do you feel okay about this? I
Right.
mean, do you feel okay? Like, I remember having a conversation with somebody who was one of my mentors, and this is a completely different conversation, but she shared with me about how um, AIDS, and she said, people in the Black community did not believe what was being told about
Mhm.
how it happened. And she said there was somebody she knew whose father, I think it was, worked for either one of the pharma companies or a lab, and they had a place, it was somewhere, I think, in Africa. And she said they knew that something was intentionally released, but they didn't want to give up their lifestyle.
Oh,
And I think about that, you know, this roundtable is about the power of the mother. So when we share all this information, it's to empower mothers to remember that you have this intuitive wisdom, you have this power within you to literally create and destroy. And I'm here and we're here to invite you to really inform yourself so that you can uplift and transform what's happening. Because when you learn what we've learned and you see what we've seen, the impetus is not you. Let's make sure you don't do this. Let's come together and do what you're talking about. Let's say no more chemicals. I love that you're going to, with American Regeneration. I mean, the fact that you're working together with the farmers to make sure that we get as much of the negative, harmful pesticides out of the food. How many young women have PCOS?
oh. And it seems like there's just so much research coming out repeatedly on PCOS. It is just, oh gosh, it's so heartbreaking. And it's a very painful condition. I
Yeah,
mean, that should be enough if you could get the PCOS people together to
yeah,
say enough, and
yeah,
I, yeah, it's just so frustrating. And, with American Regeneration, we're a relatively new organization, and we're so excited because we have a team of advisors that we consider the very, very best farmers that we have, including
Yeah.
Gabe Brown and Rick Clark. Rick Clark is another outstanding farmer, and he is one of our co-founders. And
Wow.
we've already been to DC to start explaining the beauty of regeneration. And our approach is really different from what a lot of other organic people say would approach it in, because what's beautiful is that these farmers have put together an educational platform where they can go to the chemical farmer, the big row cropper. So not like a specialty, like little farm that's organic, but it's going to those ones that are spraying the massive amounts of pesticides on GMO seeds. And they go in and they say, hey, it doesn't have to be like this. Let's have you take 1 acre and just try it this way and see like what happens in a year and see if it's okay. So they start very slowly, actually in some cases faster than others, but they're able to like very quickly take fungicides off the table because they realize they don't need to be spraying them like the chemical companies say that they do. And then, they start to wean off of these things. They realize they don't need as much toxic fertilizer. And it is so amazing to watch the miracle and the risk that, and this is like a very delicate balance because I run glyphosate facts where you can come to get real information about just how bad glyphosate is. But the truth is that when you tell these farmers that are already skeptical, hey, we're taking all of your chemicals away because you're a bad person, you're poisoning us, that's not actually a winning solution.
Yeah,
And we
no.
really need like massive change where there's a lot of handholding and support of these farmers and tell them they're going to be more profitable, they'll be less sick. All of these incentives, the economic incentive enough of not having to spend so much money on chemicals is a huge one.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we focus on, is being like, let's support you to get off of these things and not tell you what to do, but empower you to do it. So
Wonderful.
that's what we're working on. And it is amazing watching, like, Gabe and his group Regenified have been working to really quantify what that decrease in pesticides is. And like, they haven't released it yet, but it's looking very promising and exciting. And so it's like, how can we elevate this idea? And this is what's very cool too, coming back to moms, because a lot of these farmers who I talk to, they say actually it's their wives that are the ones that say, I want to do this, I want change. And so, and they're like, well, okay, it's like, of course it's the mom, of course it's the wife saying, I want to do this a better way. And I love
Yeah.
that so much because women are very, very, even though the women aren't usually frontliners, though sometimes they are on the farm, but they're very, very integral. And a lot of times they run the books and they do like a lot of
Yeah.
these things. And
Yeah.
and so they're such a part of our food supply. And so I love hearing those stories of them seeing what they can do to change.
It's wonderful. Oh my God. I'm so thrilled too. It makes my heart happy to hear that this is happening. And it goes back to this Maha, what's happening in terms of all of these different segments that are coming together to really support thriving. I mean, like that's our birthright, is to thrive. Our birthright is not, oh, here you're born, you're going to struggle and suffer. Like,
Yeah. And then
right?
live like the second half of your life for sure, just in pain of some kind,
Oh,
right?
yes. I, I love that you're speaking to that because I think about, there's an investment to, why is it that it's so expensive for people to be healthy?
Yes.
I don't understand. Like there's got to be something behind that. And when I talk to people and they'll say things to me and I totally understand it, like I shared, we're a 2 income family. I totally get that. But I always say, invest now or pay later.
100%. It's so much more expensive to spend all the health things that you're going to need down the line.
Yes.
And I was really happy to see Bobby RFK Jr. was making these rounds this week following the release of the commission report. And he just kept saying, stop saying it's expensive. Like,
Right.
look at the medical bills that people have that bankrupts families. And
Yes.
you just can never get out from under it.
Yes.
So I would argue it would be worth the investment to get a membership to Costco and go to Costco and get some of their organic food and get back in that kitchen, even if you hate to cook. Because like, I'm actually someone that never enjoyed cooking, and I'm lucky and blessed to have a husband who does. And so he did most of the family cooking for a long time, although recently I've
Yeah.
stepped it up. But just get over that. And there are easy things that you can
Yeah.
do just to
Yeah.
get the clean food on the plate.
Yeah. It's so that, that's such a great point because you can also go in with your neighbors.
Yes,
You can
totally. And
split
get
the
bulk.
food. Yeah, it's such a great idea. Yeah. And then also with the doing the home, getting those boxes and raising your own vegetables and seeing, feeling that gratification
Oh, the
watching
gratification.
something, grow. There are so many solutions. And I often think about the mind body connection, right? If people are eating a lot of chemical, overly processed foods, your brain doesn't really work well. And especially like the gut, like it's called the first brain, there's that argument, like, is your heart the first brain?
Oh yeah, yeah. The debate's
Like,
funny.
which
Yeah.
is the first brain? But really, when you're feeding yourself nutrient dense foods, everything works better.
Oh, so much better.
Yeah.
Everything works well when you have the right basics. And it was interesting going back to railing on doctors. When I realized that I finally, after 20 doctors, a psychiatrist actually ran blood work that had vitamin levels. My vitamins were abysmal, like so bad you could actually diagnose me with scurvy. Um,
Wow.
because I just wasn't absorbing anything. And I went back to my GP, who clearly hadn't been doing a very good job. And I said, "Oh, so I got these results on the vitamins. I think maybe that's part of my mystery." And she said, "Oh, that doesn't really have anything to do with what you're having." And so at that point, I was like, she doesn't understand biology. Like, you go back to cellular biology and you look and you say, I mean, I'm not even a specialist in biology. This is high school biology right here. And like, and I can still tell you that that is really important, you know?
Oh my God, it's so true. It's so, mm, mm. It's just disturbing to me that
It's so disturbing. And
we
I
even,
really think that like our kids, I really feel like we would have such a massive improvement in health if once a week kids had a magnesium bath. I mean,
ooh, how do you
I
do that?
really feel like it. And you just take Epsom salts. And in my case, actually, I have sensitivity to the sulfur in it, but you can find also just plain magnesium flakes or magnesium chloride. But most people can do fine with their benefits to the Epsom salts too. Anyway, just like, when my kids have had really bad anxiety or just I can see they're worn out, and putting them in that bath with those salts, it is just such a game changer. It's just their whole mood readjusts because they don't have the foundational magnesium that they should have because it's chelated into our soil. So the soil's holding onto it because of the chemicals, and it doesn't go into the crop. And now everyone's magnesium deficient. And like I think about that when I see people with road rage or, just all this fighting and the fighting right now politically and all of it. And I'm looking, I'm like, I can tell that we're all severely zinc and magnesium deficient. Those are the mood regulating minerals. It's not in our food anymore. So it's just so obvious once you know that. And it's like, how can we get our kids supplemented with these things until we can rehabilitate the soil to a point where it's back in our food?
That's so foundational.
It just is. It would be such an easy, low hanging thing, too. Magnesium's not expensive, you know.
Now, I know there's some doctors that there's different kinds of there's like 4 different types of magnesiums. How do you know which one to take?
I know there's so many different kinds. We just in our family we do either just the straight up magnesium chloride, which once again can be in the salt itself, and then orally we take magnesium citrate, which is one that a lot of different functional doctors have said is just usually highly tolerated by kids. And
Okay.
so that's the one that we focus on. But yeah, it can be confusing because when you go to the store and you see like a million kinds. Oh, and then there's a blend, and then there's
Yeah.
like,
I went to a dentist, and on his website there were all these different kinds of magnesiums. Will you take this for this? And I thought,
too much. I know.
overwhelming.
I know. And I did take one. I can't remember if it was glycinate, I think.
Right.
One of them that I took was like it gave me horrible nightmares. And so, you just really have to guess and check. But
Oh
for
my
some people
God.
it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least it's wonderful. It's so fascinating that sometimes it's the challenge. One of my mentors is a man named Michael Beckwith, and he came up with this saying that pain pushes till the vision pulls. And
That's interesting.
I think that it piggybacks off that. A lot of times we are motivated by pain, by what doesn't work, your health challenges, my health challenges, and also I think that what's probably common with all of the women here is this sense of justice and
Mm.
truth. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't honest.
Yes. 100% it's that. And
Yeah.
just feeling very, very wronged. And, all the women that I've met in this whole movement are just, yeah, you're right. Almost everyone comes from a place, whether it's their child, or the death of someone or their own illness. Everyone feels gypped and wronged that
Yeah,
we've been lied to, because these are just very, very important things to life, particularly in this country that touts itself with this freedom and liberty and, being able to pursue the very best things. And you absolutely cannot with what we're being dealt. And that feels like 100% an injustice and not simply not fair. Right.
yeah,
And I love that so many women stand up to that. It's
yes,
just not right.
yes. But we get to be the ones. We get
We do.
we are the ones we've been waiting for. I mean, I don't know about you, but I truly thought that even though I resisted it, I always was like, somebody's going to come along and take care of all this. And then all of a sudden it was like,
Mm.
wait, it's me.
Isn't that sort of a bummer? I mean, you're like, can't someone
Yes,
else do it? Like, I just want to go and enjoy my life. Can someone go do it?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for RFK Jr. I'm so grateful for his steadfast, unwavering stand for truth and transparency. And you know, he's human just like you and me. And he's all the things. But
Yep.
he's he's a really extraordinary human, and he was willing to stand up. Like, I was listening to a podcast with you where you shared about being at a conference and walking up to a doctor who had done amazing research and understood about glyphosate, and you said, if I can get you funding, would you bring this to various places? And he said to you, at Harvard, it wouldn't be supported. I would lose my job.
Yes. Can you imagine? And meanwhile, throughout, like the Institute of Functional Medicine is probably the premier group that does a lot of education and has a lot of different programs that doctors and nurses can go to then learn the functional ways of approaching disease. So it's really revolutionary. But at these conferences, and they were expensive conferences, but when I was just determined to learn, I'd spend money, go to these conferences. And when you would learn about leaky gut and these like components of autoimmunity, they'd always show the lining of the gut and then like different arrows going towards it, like what could be like injuring it. So gluten is there and various things. And pesticides was always there. And I would always be the person in the audience who would ask, that seems like it might be even number one. I mean, I don't know. And the only person during one of his talks that responded was Dr. Gundry from the Plant Paradox. And he said, oh, it's a huge problem. I don't even know. Like because it's such a massive problem. It's like, what can he do about it? Not saying he was dismissing it, but he was the only one to really acknowledge, oh, this is a really big component of
Right.
this epidemic. And so, these doctors are scared. And I mean, I don't blame them. They're so they're so dependent on getting that funding and getting that federal funding and being that allotment from their universities that they have no choice. And that hopefully is something also that's going to be seen to in NIH now, where that, they did pull back. There are a lot of universities right now, they're so mad, but, it shouldn't be driven by industry demands from the government.
No, education is meant to inspire.
100%.
It's meant to inspire and uplift and really provide, expansion, not what we have learned about, the hospitals that are really funded by pharma, all the universities funded by pharma. How are you going to have free information? Colleges where professors want to, reveal information or really get students to think are told, no, you can't do that. Well, you'll lose your funding. So
Totally. And it was interesting. I had a chance to talk to Jay Bhattacharya, our new NIH director,
oh,
this last week.
wow. Yeah.
And I said, how much research is done on pesticides that is there? And he said, our pesticide department is tiny. And I'm like, for such a huge issue, I mean, obviously that's strategic that it's tiny. I mean, not
Right.
on part of Jay, but previous administrations.
Right.
Um, and I was like, I mean, that's really a really big problem. We need to expand that because if the government doesn't fund what pesticides are actually doing to our bodies, then no one will, because it's all industry funded otherwise.
Right.
So that was just disappointing to hear. So he'll be hearing from me about expanding that department. Or maybe I'll just mention it. Maybe I'll just mention it up from his boss.
Yes. Yes. You could take a clip and like send it to him or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever works. I mean, I think
yeah.
it's, that's what's so wonderful about this particular time, even though there's other things that are happening that we may not like. There's so many great things in terms of taking care of your body so that your mind works, so that you're able to go forward and have, moms and others, mothers and others that really care
Yeah.
so deeply, to bring this information and to really be there, to really be, the pressure behind, like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Did you read that?
Oh,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful,
Oh, thank you
for all
so
that
much.
you've been doing, because you've been doing it. I mean, like, you are really like a pioneer.
I've
And
been trying to do it. I
you've
will say
been,
this is the most exciting time of it because finally, like, something's being said in government, which is where, frankly, we need to change things. So
yes, that's where that's where it gets implemented. So it's great. And I really look forward to, more, to more revelations and more shifts and more changes, and to see what, American Regeneration does, because that's
I'm so
wonderful.
excited.
Really great.
Yes, I'll come back at some point with updates. I'm sure will
Yes,
be good.
yes, please. So thank you for what you're doing, and, I'm really grateful that you were here with us. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close this particular dialogue?
Well, I'm so honored and excited to just have this big group of moms and just female energy around driving this change. It feels like a really special time on the history of the planet, actually, to me. And it wouldn't be the same if we didn't all have the sisterhood that is so foundational to it. It's just so special because when you feel a lot of us who have worked in this area for some time, it's very lonely. And you're kicked out of your communities, a lot of your social communities, or they think you're weird. And so it's just really nice to have a big group of people that don't think it's weird. It's actually brilliant.
Normal,
And we
normal.
all know that about each other. And so I love this group. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. So, thank you. Stay tuned for more dialogue on the Awakened Moms Roundtable. See you soon.